you might still think you're right and they might think they're right. Growing in emotional maturity means that we start to understand how we can allow multiple realities to exist, and we can love each other and still disagree, and we can help each other and still disagree. It's okay.
Hello and welcome to Separate Bathrooms. My name's Daddo.
I'm Daddo.
How are you, sweetheart?
I'm a little brain fogged today, I have to say.
Is there any particular reason for this brain fog?
It's probably lack of sleep as per usual, but there's just a lot going on. But I'm super excited to talk to our guest today because I think she's just going to be such an easygoing, awesome chat. So we're going to be talking to Emma Power. Now, she's got some amazing quotes on her website. We've been looking her up and we have a book of hers, but she writes on her website, it says, I've gathered the goodness from the world's most extraordinary teachers, tantrics, yogis, and swamis. Wow. At my workshop and events.
Sorry.
I know, I'm so excited. I love it.
I'm not going there.
I love it. Oh. At my workshop and events, I'll share the foundations to help you feel whole, step into your boundless potential, and grow heart-bursting connections with yourself and the ones you love. You'll stop missing out on the gold and start swimming in your own sunshine. Who does not want to swim in their own sunshine?
Okay. I like that. A lot of vitamin D.
Yep.
Her book is called When Love Goes South, a guide to help turn conflict around. It's funny, when love goes south, I'm thinking it goes south of the border and grabs some tequila, you know, when you hear south. But obviously love is not, this is not what it is. When love goes south, it goes a bit pear-shaped.
So what does all this mean? Let's bring her into the bathroom and find out.
Emma Power.
Hello, Emma.
Hello, it's nice to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Thanks for joining us in the bathroom. We have a lot of questions for you about your wonderful book and the work that you do.
Yep. You've got this quote saying it's time for deeper relationships, meaningful sex, and finding joy in the everyday. Every day. We hear these sort of things a lot, deeper relationships. What does deeper mean to you, Emma?
Yeah, that's a great question. From the work that I've done, from my personal experience, and just from, working with so many different people, what I see is so often there's a disparity between the significance of our relationship and the actual experience we're having of them. So, we land earthside automatically with a desire, a yearning, a need to love, to connect. But that's not always reflected in the skill we arrive with as well. So as we grow and as our relationships become more complex, we quite often are not actually equipped with what we need in order to connect well and to love well. So quite often when I see relationships breaking down, it's not from a lack of love, it's a lack of skill. When I'm seeing people who aren't connecting deeply, it's not because they don't want to. We're all yearning for it, but we just don't necessarily know how to. And I think it's time we start to understand that to love well, to connect well, to be in deeper, more meaningful relationships, we need to earn the skills and we need to learn the skills to get there.
Yeah, I love that. What brought you to this work? Why this work for you?
Yeah, so originally I was, when a lot of my friends were off studying, at uni and doing all the things to, have proper careers, for me, I was kind of following my soul's yearning, which was to learn more about myself and to walk a more spiritual path. Like I was going through the motions in life and something didn't quite feel right about that. I had these questions, there's got to be more to life. So I started studying mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and I traveled overseas to do that. And that got me onto the path of really understanding and learning about Tantra and Tantric philosophy and a lot of ancient Eastern traditional teachings. And I actually began teaching from the perspective of sexuality. A lot of people were wanting to know a little bit more about how to connect well sexually, and that was where a lot of my training came from. And what started to happen was I was offering workshops, and all these people were coming to my workshops to learn more about sex, and I started to recognize that, hang on a second, a lot of the issues that we're having around sexuality are actually relationship issues.
Right.
So Oh, that's one way in which I got into the work around sexuality and relationships and wellness. And then alongside that, I actually went through a very traumatic, difficult breakup. You know, I was deeply in love. We were both deeply in love and we couldn't make it work. And after that breakup, I had to say to myself, there's got to be a different way. This can't be how we do things. How can we love someone so much and it still not work? And that trauma informed me really diving deep into learning everything I could about relationships, connection, communication, meaning, and how we could do this better. And what became really apparent was that as I started to use the skills that I was learning in my relationships, I was witnessing in real time transformation on the spot. It didn't take much, a few tweaks here and there, and all of a sudden I was connecting in a much more fulfilling way, which was when I realised there's things we can learn here and they work in real time. And so many of us, you know, say relationships are the most important thing in our life. You know, Bronnie Ware talks about, she's a palliative care nurse who spent, you know, time with so many people who were dying, and one of the things she says is that in the end, the thing that matters most is our relationships.
Yes.
You know, this is what matters most. So the skills, our work, our hobbies, all of those things kind of go out the window in those last weeks. So what I want to do is intercede that so that people are experiencing less regret. They're not getting to the end of their life and having those realizations, that they're actually doing it well in real time and experiencing it on the spot. And that's what really has propelled me to do what I do and how I do it and why I teach it.
I'm curious, after you had the realization, you mentioned your relationship that went south. You were both very much in love, but it still didn't work. After you had the realization, did you go back to him or her? Did you go back to the partner and go, hey, should we give it another go? Here's what I've learned.
I definitely had that sense of regret of, oh God, if I'd known this sooner, if only I'd known this sooner. And I did go back a couple of times and say, God, we could have done it differently. But by that stage, we'd both gone too far in opposite directions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what I did was, what it propelled me to do was everything I could to ensure that didn't happen to someone else.
Yeah, right.
And over the years, I've witnessed so many people who are on the brink, you know, about to break up, and we've been able to pull it back or turn it around. And that really has propelled me to do that because, you know, like I said, so many of us, we're not breaking down out of a lack of love.
Yes.
It's just not knowing how, or not knowing how to connect well, to love well, to fight well.
Yeah.
And it's tearing us apart.
Yeah.
I know, you know, in our relationship, we've been on the brink quite a few times of breaking up. And those moments, though, have been the most, A, growth moments in our relationship, and B, the most important relationship moments, because on the other side of that, our relationship has been so much better because of those moments. And I just, when I hear people breaking up, and obviously, you know better than anyone, people do need to break up sometimes. It's, you know, if it's not working, it's not
That's
working.
right.
Though it breaks my heart when I hear of people breaking up just because they couldn't get past a communication issue, but they still love them. And I just think, oh, there's just, if you had have got a third person in, if you had have got your book in, something that would have helped.
Yes.
There's so much juiciness on the other side, you know?
Absolutely, and that's why I wrote the book. You know,
Yeah.
that's why I wrote my first book as well, because there is always that opportunity. And what I love about what you've just said is that it was those moments of hardship where there was deep growth. But we've got to get through that hardship to get to the growth, or we grow through the hardship. And one of the big pieces for me, and what I try to educate people on, is that one of the greatest influences on conflict and hard times in our marriages and our connections and our relationships is our attitude towards those hard times, is our mindset around those hard times.
Okay.
And here's the thing, most of us, we were never modeled, or we've never seen healthy conflict and reconciliation methods. So conflict in hard times feels disastrous. It feels awful. It feels negative and threatening and challenging. So what happens is at the first sign of challenge, our systems, because this is how they're conditioned, because this is all we know, this is our perception, our systems become activated. Yeah. We go into alert. And then if that conflict escalates, we go into full defense mode, which means fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We're activated. Now, when we're activated, it's impossible to communicate clearly or think rationally. So we're not sorting things out. We're not able to because we can't think clearly. So we need to reframe. If we want to be successful in those challenges and hard times and in conflict, we need to reframe our perception of it. And we need to shift into a new way of looking at it. And if we can see, like you seem to have discovered, if we can see the hard times, the challenges and conflict as an opportunity, then, if we see it as an opportunity to become curious around each other, to unpack things, navigate, investigate, move through, then it's one of the greatest gateways for both personal and relational growth. It's one of our greatest opportunities to grow together and to grow personally as well. But we've got to reframe it.
Yeah, you wrote, disagreements are not disasters. They're an opportunity to move forward. I really resonated with that,
Yeah, they feel like disasters. And one of my big learning curves for me, and it still is when a challenge comes up with me and my husband, it's pause, take a breath and say, this isn't a disaster, like to lean in, to start to adopt a curious attitude. And I'm actually really loving the challenge that my ego goes through now when conflict arises. I go, okay, this is an opportunity to self-reflect. And one of the other things I say in the book is that a lack of self-awareness is one of the greatest causes of conflict.
Right.
When we're not aware, when we're not questioning, we're not witnessing ourselves, we're not, unpacking something.
Yeah.
I wrote that down too.
The problem. Oh, did you? Yes.
That was, your book begins that way, doesn't it?
Yes.
I was with
deliberately so.
I was with a guy the other day and he said, it was a great thing. He just said, there's nothing kind about reaction. And I thought about that and I was like, yeah, right. It's when we react as opposed to take a breath, like you just said, and respond. Can I ask you something as well? Just, you mentioned a word before, tantric, the tantric connection. Tantric, I always hear that like for some, tantric sex or whatever, and it's got such a lot of connotations to that word. Can you explain tantric?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Tantra, like yoga, is something that originated thousands of years ago. And what we consider to be Tantra or yoga now looks very different to what it used to look, thousands of years ago. So it has developed over time. And so we've got what we would call Tantra, and we've got what's called Neo-Tantra, which is like a newer version or a series, like practices that we do that reflect the original teachings. Now, a lot of people hear the word Tantra and they immediately think sex. I know that still to this day I'm trying to convince my dad that that's not all the Tantra is about.
All I'm
like,
thinking
Tantra isn't just about sex.
All I'm thinking is Sting, having sex for 20 minutes in one position with his wife, and it's
not
all that.
Not 20 minutes, like...
Or half an hour?
No,
mate,
longer.
20 minutes would be considered Tantric quickie. That's a Tantric quickie.
No, it's hours.
Holy crap, that tells you a lot about our sex life.
He's just exposed himself there. No.
I do it all the
time. One of the great benefits of learning about Tantra is to learn how to find more fulfillment, more joy, a deeper experience, more connection in every area of your life. So if you look at Tantra, it's more of an idea. So the Tantrics were really engaged in the things of this world at a time where spirituality used to mean to refrain from, all sorts of things to become more spiritual. The Tantrics had a different idea. They said, what if we engage and really be part of what life is and deeply experience life in its fullest and do that with consciousness and awareness and exploration, and we're going to have a really great time. But not just a great time, we can use the things of this world to deepen in our own personal evolution. So it was not just about, getting our rocks off. It was, okay, how do we have great, for example, sex? How do we have great sex? How do we make the most of our bodies? How do we make the most of the connection with another person? But then how do those moments evolve us and grow us? And that's where you see the weaving of spirituality into our everyday life. And it was when I started to adopt this attitude to everything I did, whether it was, being a parent or going to work, every single aspect, when I kind of interwove this philosophy, life became more colourful, it became more full, it became more fulfilling. I stopped going through the motions and I found more depth. And so when you look at Tantra as a philosophy or as a practice or as an idea, it's not just about sex, but that's one of the cool benefits or one of the great bonuses. It's about how can we do everything we do in life well, and then how can we take that deeper? How does that evolve us? And that's what we're talking about. And you guys are doing tantric conflict, right? Because you're saying, okay, we're up against an edge here. We're on the brink here. How do we move through? How do we lean into this? How do we engage with this? And then how does this grow us and evolve us as people? And on the other side of that is, oh, wow, we just dropped a level deeper in life and with each other and personally as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's interesting, because if you speak to I don't want to blanket statement anyone here, but in general, women and sex, it's all about the mental, emotional, often spiritual connection first, and then they feel engaged in the act of sex, where men,
yes,
not all men, but in general, are like, I don't care about that. I'm just about the physical. It's just like, I just want in. It doesn't matter what's happening in the relationship. The sex is what's going to heal that conflict, or it's just going to get me closer to my woman or man, and that's what I want. So do you find that it's more challenging for men to understand that tantric connection? Is that a bigger shift in a mindset for them than women, or what do you find about that?
I you know what, you'd think so, but when I look at, I've been running workshops, tantric sexuality workshops and relationship workshops for 13 years now.
Yeah.
Had seen thousands of people do this work. At least half of them, most of the time, half of them are men, and those men show up. And the women in my workshops will often say, oh, wow, it's really healing to be in this space, because I'm seeing these men really showing up. And a lot of men are yearning for more depth and connection. And this, yes, we know that quite often, traditionally, men will come ejaculate really quickly or first. That comes from an old survival psychology, right? If you go back thousands of years, there's a tiger in the bush, better, we're getting the job done, and we are off again. We are running. This is a survival thing. So you see it as fast as you can, right? So that's where that's coming from. It's not because they're being selfish or it's a reflection of their character. It's because that made sense once upon a time. But over time, our needs have changed. So when you look at relationships, we're no longer just in relationships for survival or procreation or logistically. We have evolved to choose partners out of friendship and relationships and connection and shared core values and shared interests. So we now, in this day and age, we want to be in relationships for more than just survival, procreation, survival and procreation perspective. However, that's evolved. Unfortunately, our sexuality hasn't seemed to evolve so much at the same rate. So all we need to do is we need to get up to scratch with that. We need to start to look at, okay, how can our sex be reflective of the reasons we are together? So if we're together for connection, friendship, relationship, depth, love, let's get our skills up when it comes to sexuality to be able to connect in that way. And I'm seeing men's sexuality, over time, I'm seeing men's sexuality starting to match women's sexuality in that way.
Interesting.
I'm seeing men having orgasms. I'm not seeing them personally, but I'm hearing the story of men having orgasms the moment that their partner put their hand on their chest, and boom, they're having. And I'm not talking just physical orgasm. I'm talking orgasmic experiences.
Yeah.
So I know we're kind of delving into neo-tantric sexuality, but men can separate orgasm and ejaculation. Those two things don't automatically come together at the same time. So what I do is I teach men how to train their bodies so they can separate the two, and they're having multiple orgasms in sex. They're having sex for longer, and they're able to have these more connected, spiritual, deep experiences because they've got a control over their physical survival mechanisms.
Yeah. What does that look like in a workshop? I mean, I would imagine it's a group setting. Is it? I mean, of course, we all go, everyone's naked and, looking at each other.
No.
I mean, that's the movie version of it.
It's your heaven, isn't it, sweetheart? Something like that?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm still trying to convince people that my workshops aren't just a massive orgy. It's funny because I think it's one of the reasons. That my work has been so popular over the years is because, for me, I really hold this as a space of integrity.
Yes.
It's a space where couples can go deeper together. I'm really clear that there's no nudity, there's no genital touch, there's none of that going on. But I am able to take couples to a completely different place in their sexuality without any of that having to happen. And it's through a process of lectures and exercises, and it's quite amazing what we're achieving without taking our clothes off and without having to do any of that. But a lot of it is because the good sex comes from good connection, and that's what I'm building over the weekend. Good connection. And we get a lot of single people there as well, and they're developing their connection and understanding of themselves.
Yeah, right.
Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of it's coming from. We just don't know. We're upskilling. And then I say, here's your homework. Go home and do this at home. Go home and do that at home. And then come back and tell me how good it was.
Yeah.
And so that's the weekend. So Sunday's probably quite exciting when people come back and tell you the stories of what happened last night.
Oh, mate, some of the testimonials that we hear are just profound. I just get so much of it. I go, me and my husband, I read out we just love them. We're like, look at what's happening. It's great. No, it's really exciting.
So does your husband love being married to a relationship? Would you call yourself a sex expert as well?
Well, I loop sexuality is just a part of relationships. It's one of my areas of expertise, absolutely, and that's where a lot of my training has come from. But I'm a relationships coach, author, educator, and does he love it? There's definitely perks, and there's also it's hard. It's harder for him in some ways because I'm constantly requiring him to step up.
Yes.
I'm saying, okay, let's grow together. In some ways, it makes it easier because I can communicate with him in a way that my training informs, and he sees me communicate with our children that way as well. So it really, from a family life perspective, things are smoother for sure. I don't know how people are actually surviving family life and their relationships without the skills. So that on one hand, it's easier for him, and on the other hand, he's like, "Wow, you're my mirror, and you see my potential, and you're pushing me towards it." And it means that we don't get lazy in our relationship, but it does mean we have to grow.
You write something that really caught my eye. We say relationships are one of the most important aspects for life, but where are we learning the skills? I truly believe that future school education will look like classes in healthy relationships, conflict prevention and resolution, self-love, boundaries, communication skills, conscious sexuality. I want a school like that too, please, across the universe. How amazing would be if our kids were learning that?
Yes, absolutely. And it's baffling for me that we're not, and you see, if you Google conflict resolution, most of what you see coming up is conflict resolution in the workplace because we're just trying to catch everyone up. By the time they get into work and everyone's bickering in there, with their colleagues, everyone's like, this isn't working. We're not flowing. We're not working well. It's not productive. And we've got, educators trying to come into workplaces to try and sort it all out. Why aren't we teaching this stuff in schools? Why aren't we showing children at 2, 3, 4? I mean, I teach when my child was 18 months, I took him through the concept of boundaries, and we practice boundaries every day. So he understands his inner yes, his no, how to let someone down, but hold his own truth. We do all of that at home. I just think, why aren't we doing this with kids? We need it for sure. Absolutely. The world would be a completely different place if we were learning these skills at home.
Agreed.
Or at school.
Yeah.
We unashamedly, well, it's weird. I don't really want to admit this, but I do. We watch MAFS, Married at First Sight. Elle and I were talking about it the other day, saying it just feels like a playground of watching people's childhood trauma being acted out on TV.
Yeah.
And just a lot of pain and a lot of projection, a lot of pain there from some of the people. Not all of them, some of them. The show's taking a lot of heat. What do you think about it?
Well, you know what? I will tell you a funny story. I've seen my book on maths twice now, so I hope they're all reading it.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's great.
The shows are closed up a couple of times.
Yeah, that should be a prerequisite for going on the show.
I think so. They need to read both the books, and hopefully there'll be less of that. But you know what? You make a good point when you say it's like you're seeing this young childhood trauma, because a lot of us, in order to reframe our ideas around conflict and challenge, like we spoke about earlier, we need to develop an emotional maturity. Now, most people, because like we've spoken about, there's a lack of education in the home and school.
Yeah.
Most of us are walking around in adult bodies acting like children when it comes to conflict and challenge. So we're throwing our hissy fits and our tantrums, and we're lacking an understanding of our own emotional states. And therefore, we're like kids, finding it really hard to get to a solution. And so one of the big pieces for me, what I urge my clients, my students, my readers, is that before you even talk about how do we deal with conflict, you need to get to know who you are. You need to understand yourself deeply. You need to develop the most intimate relationship in your life is with yourself, and this is the one you need to work on and develop first and foremost if we're going to get anywhere with conflict and challenge. And so it's no mistake that my book starts off with a process that I developed, which is designed to awaken a self-awareness in the reader. So as they go through, I'm not even talking about what we do when we're in the fire, when the heat is on in our arguments. I'm talking about get to know who you are, get to know your stories, your triggers, understand your background, develop the ability to witness when your ego is at play. Understand all of that, and we're going to be experiencing a lot less trauma and conflict down the track. So for sure, we need to be educating young, but we have a responsibility to grow in emotional maturity, just like we need to mature in every area of life as we grow up. And we do that by deeply understanding who we are.
Absolutely. Emma Power, you've written the book, When Love Goes South, a guide to help you turn conflict around. It's so cute. It's like this little sort of nugget book. I love it. You can fit it in your handbag. You can bring it out at any point in time.
It's robust. It's not going to get chewed
Bible.
up.
Yeah.
It's a hardcover.
It is. It's so
That's
good.
literally, we said, let's make it the size.
Yeah.
Let's make it the size that you can fit in your handbag.
Yeah,
and
smart.
Yeah, it is very, very beautifully designed.
Yeah,
You've got to make it very, it's a book about conflict. So, the content's juicy and it's deep, so let's make it really cute and beautiful to read.
It's great, and you can we were just opening up to any random page and going, oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I know you've structured it beautifully, though. There's some great stuff in there.
And it's a workbook too. You give exercises, so it's actually it's interactive.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
To finish off, Emma, I know this is it's probably the worst question to ask relationship experts, but we're going to do it anyway. Summarize. What 3 things can we do today that would make a difference in our relationship?
Oh, so many things. I would say first one is to learn how to self-regulate, so that when a challenge arises or conflict comes up, we learn how to calm our systems so that we can stay connected whilst being in challenge. And that is really a superpower when we learn to self-regulate, when we can pause, when we can breathe, when we can relax ourselves, even in hardship, then we can stay connected. And when we can stay connected to the other person, even in the hard times, that's when we do the work together. So I guess that would be my first tip is when it comes to conflict, self-regulate, learn to self-regulate. And there's a lot in my book about that. Secondly, when it comes to conflict, stop fighting dirty. Yeah. you can be, and I know this might surprise some people, but you can be furious, you can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be in deep pain, you can be betrayed, all of those things, and you can still communicate consciously in that state. There's no need to be throwing down verbal hand grenades just because you're feeling big feelings. And that's, again, I teach people how to communicate clearly in those moments, because often a lot of the damage done, that, like the serious damage that really hurts and puts a dent in a relationship, a lot of it comes not from the challenge, but from the way we dealt with the challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the third tip I would give is that when you do experience challenge and conflict, to take some time afterwards to self-reflect, either by yourself or with the other person, to look at what happened, how it happened, and what you could do differently next time. Because until we say to ourselves, how could we do this differently next time, until we make a plan around that, we're going to keep on repeating our patterns over and over and over again. It doesn't stop until we stop and have the capacity to witness, self-reflect, discuss if you can with the other person, and say, how is this not going to look like this next time?
I've been in a situation with Elle where we've done that sort of thing, and we've just ended up back down the rabbit hole again, because you go, what happened? How did it happen? Well, you said this. And when you said that, or when you did this, and suddenly it's like, back in the defense again,
Yes.
So there has to be a way to, in that self-reflection with the other person. I personally like to do it alone, or maybe with a therapist or someone else, rather than the person I've been in the.
And doing it with a therapist is great. Often we can't get into a therapist at the time. And one of the reasons I wrote this book was because I had so many clients saying, can I come see you? I need help. And I said, I'm not taking on new clients, but here's my way of getting the work into your home and into your hands. And one of the things I say in the book, because I hear you, if we just start to say, you did this and that's how it happened. So one of my little rules is you don't say you did this. In the self-reflection process, you say, this is how I could have done something differently. Now it's your turn. We actually take some responsibility. How could this have happened? And there's a lot of tips and tools. What you start to learn is how to communicate your hurt around a situation in a way that isn't shaming, blaming, or pointing the finger.
Yeah.
For example, you could say, what you said was awful, and how dare you say that, and you better never say something like that to me again. Or you could say something like, hey, I have a problem, can you help me fix this? I can't seem to move on from something you've said. It's hurt me. I feel really sad about it. Can we unpack that a little? Can we work on that together? It's got a different feeling, right?
It sure does.
So there are methods that we can use, and it's like if you own the feeling and you're not shaming or blaming or pointing the finger, you're saying, I'm hurting. Can you help me fix it?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to reach out in that moment?
Yeah, that's right.
You might still think you're right, and they might think they're right. Growing in emotional maturity means that we start to understand how we can allow multiple realities to exist. And we can love each other and still disagree, and we can help each other and still disagree. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Emma, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. We love your book.
Oh, it's been
We're going to put
wonderful.
the book, all the info in our show notes. The book, again, When Love Goes South, a guide to help turn conflict around. I mean, you're like gold. We could do this for hours. We don't have the time, unfortunately. But
I feel like
thank you so much.
We've just hit the tip of the iceberg.
We have.
There's so much juiciness I know that you know and could share with us. So, but thank you for your time. It's been really special.
Thank you so much for having me. I love chatting to you guys, so thank you.
Thank you. I never get tired of talking to relationship experts. I never get tired. Everyone has their own version of it.
Yeah.
And they've always got something that is a new piece of information for me that I just love.
What sat with you this time?
Well, there was a lot, but I loved the whole thing she was talking about. For a start, the whole Tantric and the Neo-Tantric and what all that means. That's something new that I had not heard before. And those 3 tips for conflict resolution that learn how to self-regulate, Stop fighting dirty. We're really good at that. We've never done that. Take time to self-reflect. What would I do differently? I mean, they're so simple.
Yeah. She forgot to self-medicate.
That's your favourite one. That's footy in a beer for you. Or rather, a golf game.
But growing in emotional maturity as well, I think that just having that, because I think that's really important, because we spend so much time taking care of our taxes and our, money and fitness and what we put into our body, but our emotional maturity, it's something that we often sort of let that go.
Yeah, you just assume it's going to grow.
Yeah.
It's not always correct.
It takes work. I've never heard the term tantric conflict, which is what we're talking about here. That's what she's that's what I understand this to be. Her conflict resolutions were tantric conflict.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. It's great. That's all we have time for today. I do want to say my brother Andrew and I have a new podcast coming out called So You Want to Make a TV Show?
Yes.
We started with a blank sheet of paper and we came up with an idea. We were just having it was a fair income conversation.
Yes.
He was on a mic, I was on a mic, and there was a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Episode 1 is us coming up with an idea.
It's so great. It's the first work you two have ever done together as well, in all these years of both of you being in the industry.
Yep.
And now here you are on this podcast.
Yeah, it's our first creation together. We
fantastic.
worked together many years ago doing acting together, but that was someone else's words. This is us coming up with an idea and dealing with each other, and we're quite different.
Yes, yeah.
And we're quite different.
Daddo Brothers Productions.
Anyway, check it out wherever you listen to your podcast. It'll be on the same platform as Separate Bathrooms. It's called So You Want to Make a TV Show. And thank you for being with us today. If you've loved the show, please write a review, tick us off, say that you're listening. It helps the cause immeasurably. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.